All right, welcome to the party, pals. So I'm going to go ahead and just start dropping this link right now for the open stage. So if you would like to come up, you can go ahead and go into the backstage for now. And then after this introduction, then I'll go ahead and bring you up. We'll be talking more about Risk Register again today. So this is going to be the last video for the Risk Register. And then starting next week, we'll start going into those new videos. Let me pull this up. How's everybody doing so far? Still pretty early in the week, but I mean, we're getting there. Almost halfway there. And so then next week, we're going to start with doing documenting third parties, which is going to be next Monday. So Monday and Tuesday is when our hands-on is. And so we're all here to just break down barriers, foster collaboration and community, working towards a more secure future. And we're all here to learn and just grow together. So those are like our main objectives. And that's also why I always go through and state, you know, if you guys have a question, resources, anything like that to share, even if it doesn't pertain to what we're talking about at that time, definitely just still drop those. One of the best places to do so is actually inside of our Discord server, where you can also drop like your personal LinkedIn or other social media profiles into our live chat as well. Because that's a big, massive part of this is to network together. We all have our strong suits. But so as I was saying, so Monday, Tuesday is our hands-on. Next week, we'll start Monday with doing like our list of vendors and platforms, third party. Wednesday is our GRC Let's Get Technical, which starting out next week, we're going to be doing learn and practice. So some of the different platforms that are out there and how you could start getting into those to start learning more of the technology side of things. And then next Thursday, we actually have a speaker lined up for that one. And so next Thursday, which is our, so this Thursday is our job readiness and resume review. So if you do want your resume reviewed or otherwise, definitely go through and submit that. You could do so on our website. I'll actually drop the link to our form for it. And then next Thursday is going to be our actual talk itself. And so we'll have a speaker next Thursday on the 6th, which will be navigating GRC technology implementation. So definitely take a look at that as well. And one of the best places to learn more about that is going to be on our website. And I'm dropping the actual direct link to the calendar page. And then Friday is our AMAs. So I did drop the link for the stage already if anybody would like to come up. So these days are really more for like review, and we just added these days on as like Q&A for the risk register itself. So like yesterday we did start digging into like CISO Assistant a little bit and so forth. So if you guys do have any questions or otherwise, definitely drop that into chat. Otherwise, I'm probably just going to go through a couple more of those line items again, and then maybe we will just go ahead and start copying those over into the CISO Assistant instance. But if you do come up on stage, you do not have to turn on your video. Go ahead and ask questions. You could drop that personal LinkedIn into the live chat on our Discord server. And then if you do share something that you don't want to be public, just let me know. Either on Discord, LinkedIn, or you can also contact me at contact@studygrc.org. We also have B-Dubs has her website, so britwhite.io, dropping articles every Monday. And then also our website, which I dropped a moment ago. And then we are currently in the stage where we are looking for sponsorship, so that way we could provide more value to the community. And then you'll see that donation link get auto-posted because I hate trying to sell value. But that is there as an option. I do not want anybody to feel obligated. That's just going to allow us to do more. And then we also do have a monthly giveaway, which is actually getting drawn this Thursday. So it's going to be last call here in a couple days. So right before our meeting on Thursday, it's going to end up getting drawn automatically inside of our Discord server for 2 1-month memberships to cyber.com. And I just so happen to be wearing one of their t-shirts. Oh, it's a little backwards there. Just so happen to have one of their t-shirts on, which I've had for a long time, actually. Yeah, and like B-Dub states is we give the value away for free. And then without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and drop this link as well. So every single episode, I've been going through and dropping the template link for the risk register itself. So if you guys do want to go through and build your own, I have not come across anybody who's, I haven't heard from anybody who's actually gone through and built one yet. So I would love to go through and review somebody's or assist with building one out if you guys would like to. Throughout this series on the risk register, I've gone through and built this one out, which I've also shared the link for already. Let me go ahead and get this shared. I got to go ahead and pull the link up here. And now you guys can see it. And so this is the one that we built out so far. And I'm going to grab the link to this one so you guys could actually view this one on how we've set this one up based on that exact same template that I shared. And then welcome to the party, pal, everybody. So I see Jeffrey, 8-Bit, Laura Flores, B-Dubs, and then also Bubba, 0101. Pop it in on the Discord side. Yeah, if you guys have any particular questions or otherwise, even if it's not related to risk register, we can go over that section there. Otherwise, I'm probably going to just start copying this into the CISO Assistant. We haven't received any project files or otherwise, so we'll just go ahead and continue. I'm going to go ahead and get this CISO Assistant pulled up. And so if you're not familiar with CISO Assistant, yesterday during our stream, I did go through and give like a quick rundown of what CISO Assistant is. In short, it is they have a community edition, which is free and open source. It includes about 90% of all of the tools that they have in their enterprise version, and it's an all-in-one GRC tool. And so we do have an instance of it that I do want to start using. And this gives us a better idea of how like a lot of these tools are going to be utilized in business outside of a spreadsheet. And matter of fact, I just got the guided tour here, so I may actually go ahead and run through that so we can have that up on screen. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, and thanks for everybody for tuning in. So I guess we're just going to go ahead and start working on the CISO Assistant portion of it. PBO says he loves spreadsheets. Yeah, but I don't know, PBO. I mean, you could. So one of the big things is you could do all of this inside of a spreadsheet. There's few things that you can't do inside of a spreadsheet, really. So you could make the actual dashboards. You can make the charts. You could go through and make the different sheets for the risk acceptances or exemptions, like you see on the left-hand side. There's a lot of things that you could go through and build out in the spreadsheet, but it's way easier through the platform. And then also another big thing is collaboration. And then also like cross-referencing that information as well, filling out a form rather than filling out a row. But Yeah, I am not surprised. I mean, I like spreadsheets too, but not when it comes to the whole program. Oh yeah, and that also, oh, that command didn't even go through. PBO's channel as well. And so PBO, just if you didn't catch us yesterday with PBO's like 5 shout outs. So he goes live tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, which I just dropped his YouTube channel in the chat there. Trying to level out that music a little bit. All right. So welcome to CISO Assistant. This is your first time logging in. Would you like to take the guided tour? Let's go ahead and take the guided tour. So 21 steps. So let's take a tour of the main features to get you started. All right. So you can always restart this tour by clicking on the button. So down here in the bottom left on like the hamburger menu. All right. The organization. So you can see multiple different sections over here on the left-hand side. This first section, this is going to be where you define the hierarchy and parameters of your organization and click on it. All right. Domains allow you to isolate your objects using associated roles. You will need at least one. So you can go ahead and isolate different objects out. So like we can go through and we'll have like our global by default, but then we could also have a domain where maybe we just have a customer service domain, or we could have, a domain just for a particular department or otherwise, or even a service if we needed to. All right. And then this is where you will be able to create a new domain. Okay. Yeah. Over in the domain section. All right, parameters are functional sets within a domain. You will need at least one. All right. So then we cannot even dig into this. I was showing on the stream yesterday that on the guide for CISO Assistant, it does seem a little bit outdated there, but they've gone through and they've pushed a lot of updates through the development recently, just in the last few months. So I was actually just pulling up their guide here. I'm going to go ahead and drop this in chat. All right. And then, all right. So this is where you will be able to create a parameter. Catalog overview. So the catalog is where you will be able to import frameworks, threats, matrices, and other predefined objects. All right. So that's pretty straightforward as far as like the catalog goes. So that's where we're going to import all of our frameworks and standards and so forth. We'll be able to also browse the different objects in there as well. And then underneath that, then it's now showing us that we have the frameworks section. So view and manage compliance frameworks. You will need at least one to initiate an audit. So we can go through and import with the download button itself. And you could see behind this tint that we already have NIST CSF 2.0 loaded in. Risk matrices. So view and manage risk matrix. You will need at least one to initiate the risk assessment. This is where you'll be able to import. Okay. All right. Compliance is where you'll manage your compliance activities. So such as audits, baselines. Risk, this is where you'll manage your risk analysis and registry. So under risk is likely where we'll put the risk register itself. Group and manage your analysis through risk assessments. And then analytics, the overview section covers your main dashboard and analytics. view aggregated analytics and reports here, or track your individual assignments and tasks. And then again, it's telling us that we can go ahead and start that tour down there. And so what we'll most likely have to do is like set up a domain or otherwise to at least start putting this in here. Let's see. And so if you go into a particular section here, and also off of that link that I dropped, you can also get over to like the GitHub page to download the actual free version, which actually goes through a Docker container. So you could just set it up on Docker. It's pretty straightforward. That may be another separate video, like a special stream that we do, is where we can just go through and set that up on like Lightsail, which is like what PBO was asking about before. All right. So let's see. And then I'm going to go back over to the risk register here and see how are we going to do this. So then I can't do split screen with this here, but pretty much what we're looking at is just moving some of these different types of risk and details over to the CISO Assistant system. And so if I move back over here, then you can also see, so we have like our domain listed. So we're just going to throw it under global for now. We can always change that at a later time as well. You could see that we have for status potential, exploitable, mitigated, and fixed. So most of these are going to be potentials. And then this is running off of a different thing. So severity, low, medium, high, critical. And then we would also attach this to like exceptions and applied controls. We could reference other things and label them in order to keep it together. So like we can actually create a label that would be like register in order to link all of the ones that we built inside of the register together. Because eventually what our plan is to just use CISO Assistant. And so having that separated out, that we know, oh, okay, we just went through and did that on, well, it's not even allowing me to select the label. So maybe that's weird. But so I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this first one over here. And not all of the details are the same. That's one of the big things with risk register, is that it may not be the exact same. No two people may do it the same way. Most organizations are just going to have their own templates already designed out or otherwise. And it's just like one of the biggest issues here is that we went through and we actually used the 830s. Let me move, yep, okay. So one of the biggest issues here is that we use the 830s matrix. So, you know, that's a little bit of an issue for the quantitative values for just the numbers. Whereas if you're looking at CISO Assistant here, it's not allowing us to go through and do that. It's asking for that quantitative. Oh, Laura. Laura keeps failing the CAPTCHA. Is this portal the same as Archer and ServiceNow? Archer and ServiceNow are two completely separate platforms, so it's going to be different. So every single one of these GRC tools are going to be different in one way or another. Archer is probably going to be the most different just because it's, you know, the big boys. But the key thing to know is if you are unable to go through, like one of the biggest downsides is that there's not much training out there for Archer or ServiceNow, particularly for the ServiceNow GRC. And so the purpose of this software is identical. The goal is to consolidate it into a GRC tool that's on its own platform and they have the different sections. So the names might be different, the interface might be a little bit different, but the overall objective of having it inside of a platform is the same. All right, I'm glad that you were able to prove that, Laura. Yeah, some people definitely do struggle with that capture portion. That's what keeps down the bots. So most of the bots aren't in YouTube live chat. But and so I hope that kind of answers your question a little bit there. And then PBO would be a really good person to reach out to regarding that too, or otherwise. But yeah, in large, the interface and wording might be a little bit different. And that's pretty much what you're going to be looking at. And of course, the more you pay for a tool, then the more you're going to get out of it. And so although you could use CISO Assistant for large enterprise, it may be more effective for you to just go off and spend the, $600,000 for Archer to, have all of the automations and all the collaboration aspects inside of it. Because also that's why a lot of these tools become so expensive, is because they create these automations to make your job easier. And yeah. And then like ServiceNow is really popular already. So then they just bolt on that GRC side of it. But it's just like PBO mentioned earlier, is that he likes spreadsheets. All of this you could theoretically still do inside of a spreadsheet. That's what's typically been done. But for backups, for business continuity, just for the collaboration aspect, this is a little bit different. And so we could probably go through and do a whole video just on CISO Assistant again. We did go through and do a walkthrough of some of the main key points with the co-founder. And one of the biggest things I like is that you could assign assignments in here. So they have like a built-in calendar and everything. So you'll see as we start building this out, where we can actually go through and assign different tasks and mitigations and so forth to different team members. So there's so much that's in here: impact analysis, priority reviews. You could check out the timeline. We're talking about like poems basically at this point. So it's just going through and getting this jump started. Yeah, and so like B-Dub says that the profile photo is a computer though, so that is kind of sus. That is fair to say. And yeah, Jeffrey, we can go through and definitely line up a special stream to just go over some of the functions. Because one of my biggest things is that they just haven't kept up with their documentation side of it. So that's actually something we could probably help them with, because it is an open source project. So I don't mind going through and making some of the documentation for it or helping in some way with that. So Kelvin asks, I am transitioning from help desk to GRC, so I was just to get an understanding of it. So it's like a ticketing system. To an extent. So the GRC tools that you'll see, there's a whole long list of them. I could drop a bunch of them into the Discord server. So CISO Assistant is one of 2 open source GRC tools that I've come across, which is one reason why we're using it, is because I like open source projects. And this allows small and medium businesses to actually obtain GRC tools that actually work. And the main objective is to go through and have all of your stuff into a platform. And so we could put our policies in here. We could have our risk acceptances, our exemptions. We could have our whole framework, everything in one location. Typically, you would have that inside of a spreadsheet or a series of spreadsheets, and you'd have an entire folder full of policies, and it could be just spread across. And then you would use, like Outlook for your calendar and collaboration aspect of it. if you have to like line up interviews and all kinds of other stuff, whereas you could do all of that inside of CISO Assistant. And that's the unique thing with GRC tools, is that it kind of consolidates all of that into one tool and connects it all together. So, we could add users and user groups in here and assign tasks. We can go through and we could also do our asset inventory. So this is another thing that we're going to end up going through and doing, is our asset inventory. Oh, look at that. PBO's popping up. Did you want to, are you able to even state like how different Archer is, or is that under NDA?
No, it's not on NDA. You can go look out the Archer.
We should contact them for demo.
They probably wouldn't respond. I take that. They wouldn't respond. I'd be surprised if they respond. The first thing I'll ask you is, what's your budget? I bet.
Well, hey, we could find out.
One thing I was going to chime in is on ServiceNow has their GRC module. That's I guess it's getting pretty hot. I'm not
Yeah, and so ServiceNow is typically used for like the asset tracking and like IT management, right? And then they have their GRC side of it that you can bolt on.
Yeah, what the hell?
And so that's this right here. And so you could see like this is actually, let me see if I can make this image bigger. Yeah. So like this is an image that they have on their homepage for the ServiceNow GRC. And so you could see how they have all their charts, they have the numbers and everything else. And so that's going to be really similar to like the homepage for CISO Assistant here. And so they are different. Each tool is going to be different in its own interface and language that they utilize, but the overall objective is the same.
Yeah, and I think ServiceNow just was so embedded in corporate America for them to add on a GRC module, because they were already in the Fortune 500 company. So, and a lot of people hated Archer, and it was so expensive. So,
well, and a lot of companies already have ServiceNow.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, they're embedded.
Yeah, for their asset tracking and so forth. So.
There was an open source system called, oh my God, I can't think of the name. It was pretty good. I got to think of the name of it. They had asset tracking in it, and they had CMDB, where they would actually scan your IPs and figure out your assets. God, what was the name of it? It was pretty good. It was a ticketing system too.
Yeah, and so I have an entire folder full of a list of GRC tools. So I have like 10 or 12 different tools in here. Tenable's another good one. Logic Gate is another big one. There's also another one. Anecdotes. I don't even know how that's supposed to be pronounced. I'm not even sure how we're supposed to pronounce this one. But this is another tool. But there are dozens of different tools out there. But ServiceNow, GRC, Archer is going to be like on the state and government side mostly, right? Enterprise, large enterprise.
No, yeah, it's going to be state government and probably Fortune 1000 companies. Because the state,
Logic Gate's another one. And there's also some of these companies that go off and make their own as well. So like Logic Gate, for an example, I believe went off and made their own GRC tool from being a consultant. And so you'll also see that like with Risk 360 is another really popular consulting firm, and they went off and made their own platform for their own GRC tool.
Which is kind of crazy, but it kind of makes sense.
You would think, right?
Yeah, but I think back then they were kind of doing their own methodologies. So they wanted something to fit. And two is they sold it as part of their consulting fees. So I think they were selling that to you when they left. You would have it all integrated and ready to go. So
yeah, and I think like this one right off the bat, you could see. So it says Hyperproof is another.
I've used that before. I was saying something bad. I used that when I was working for a short engagement. It was
a very short period of time.
Yeah, I didn't. It was. Yeah, we were doing some pre-3PAO work, which was interesting. So we went in there. It had, but the part thing about it though is we had like it was a crazy amount of findings in there. We were doing like 5,000 findings in there. So you have to review them.
And so that's just what I'm trying to showcase, is that there's dozens and dozens of options out there. There are some popular ones, but you could even see on this image right here on the right that, again, it's just another dashboard that shows your matrix, your charts, and where you're at, where you're going. Centralize your compliance and risk management. That's what the overall goal for these GRC tools come down to. And then a lot of these ones are implementing like different automations. One of the cool things that I feel like is really cool with CISO Assistant, which you may not realize, like people may think like, oh, it's free, so it's not that great, but you'd be surprised. I think I have to start an audit, but let me go through and I'll start a risk assessment for an example. Oh, I need to start a parameter first. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do a demo here. And so typically we're going out of realm here a little bit, but global. Will it let me just apply global? No, it won't. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and add a domain as demo.
What's the domain in that context? What do they mean by domain?
Domain is just to separate it out. So you have like your global organization, and then you can separate it out by like department or platform.
Okay. I usually see. That's what I usually. Yeah, I usually see department or division. I don't really see domain very often, but it's cool. Just terminology and vernacular. So no, that's cool.
Well, and I think that's one of the challenges, is that this is made out of France, and so some of the terminology is different than what they definitely do still work with NIST, but terminology is a little bit different than what I would say we typically go through.
Boo. Boo. No, that's cool. Like you said, for open source product, it seems pretty robust. So I'm gonna get in there and put some NIST stuff in there. See if I can run a NIST audit.
Yeah, I think I could just go through and start a demo audit here. So it's just auto defaulting to the only parameter, and the target framework is going to be the NIST CSF 2.0. I'm going to go ahead and mark myself for the author. And so what I want to showcase is what's unique. So after you go through and you start an assessment or an audit, so either a risk assessment or an audit, what I really love about this is this is fully functional. So you can go through. This is the first page you see once you start an audit. And so I just started a compliance check, basically. And they have what's called flash mode and table mode and apply mapping. And so flash mode is going to really make your job a lot easier off the bat. So like flash mode is what we're going to start doing next month. And so this is just really simple. It's flashcards. And so it's just going to go through all 106 controls in the CSF 2.0. And it's going to ask us, where do we stand on that? And if we're not accessed, then we'll just review that later on. But like this very first one, the organization mission is understood and informed cybersecurity risk management. We're going through on study GRCs, and I just marked this as all as demo, but is our mission understood and informed cybersecurity risk management? Do we have that written in our policies and procedures and so forth?
Yes.
Well, we don't have any policies and procedures right now, so technically, no.
Ooh.
That's why we're working on this, PBO.
I guess.
Public view.
Shout out to you. You said it so much, I just assumed you written it down. You said it like every other stream. I just assumed you written it down. We should have just recorded it.
Yeah. Exactly.
No,
we'll just run off of the YouTube channel for evidence.
No, I put partially compliant, man. It's understood. You just ain't got it written down. I put partially compliant, and I give you.
Yeah. No. Correct. Yeah.
Because you said every stream damn near. We understood.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the other upsides is that the entire board is very heavy on the cybersecurity side of things and risk management in particular. So different than most organizations. But so that's what I like about this, is that we could quickly go through on a slide deck style or a flashcard style and knock a lot of this out. And so in a couple of videos, we'll go through and actually go through all of these at some point.
Question.
So one of our videos next month is when we'll go through all of this, but I wanted to showcase that part. And so you could see here, like they have a lot of this stuff in here. We can go through and set up action plans.
On that flashcard, could you put evidence? If I said compliant, could I upload the policy there? Or was that somewhere
so
else?
you can't do it on the flashcard here. So this is just to quickly go through and weed out the majority of it off the bat. But you could go through and go down to the tables here. And so like if we go to one of the subcategories, then we could go ahead and open that up and apply evidences. So like I just opened up OC 01 and we could actually upload evidence right here. And we could even add exemptions to this control, and we could add this to the calendar too and assign it to somebody.
I like that. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, and so that's what makes this so easy. And so this is where it becomes, I think this is a really good like checks and balances as well, because you know, a spreadsheet's great, but then also for businesses that aren't too familiar, especially, like this kind of helps you push you in the right direction. Like you may know, hey, we need to handle this risk management. You may know what risk is and so forth, but you may know how to go through and do an assessment, but this kind of consolidates it all in one spot. And they also have exports as well. So like even after you're done with your audit, you can go through and export this in multiple formats as well. One of the big ones that they're going to be working on is what is that? OS Cal?
Yeah,
or,
that's hot. Now I wouldn't say it's hot. It gets a pain. We've been talking about that for a decade, though.
Yeah, and so the big thing with OS Cal is that allows you to go off and import that into other GRC tools as well.
Yeah, interoperability. I haven't seen it, but everybody talks about it.
Well, and so something that I've heard before is that like when you're doing like a business agreement or like a third-party audit, you can export that to OS Cal and they can take that and work with it.
Yeah, what we do, which is probably, I guess, not the smartest a lot of times, is usually we export all of our evidence, like policies, then we zip it up and we just put a password on it. We just email it to them.
So Jeffrey mentions that most of the documentation is not in English, especially in the forms. I believe, are you talking about inside of the Discord server that they have or a website that they have? So they do have the documentation for the link that I dropped for the guide, which is in English. I don't know if they have an online form or not. But this is one of the things that we're most likely going to end up helping them with is the documentation portion of it.
Which I hate.
Yeah. Well, and that's just going to, kind of assist people with getting started with it. And also, like I know somebody who's a consultant. They started their own consulting agency. They only have like 3 or 4 clients, and they're actually running all 4 clients in the same instance of CISO Assistant. They just set up different domains for each one.
Those are clients in the United States?
Yes.
But
they're not government.
You know my next question is,
yeah.
Is there clients do government work?
I don't believe so.
I still don't like it.
Well,
but that makes sense. I retract that, Chris.
Well, and I don't believe they have done it yet, but I could definitely see them going through and having a third-party code audit of some sort at some point.
We should do it.
Yeah. Well, I don't have the experience to do a code audit, but you do.
We might do that.
It's only about 1,100 files or so.
No, I wouldn't need to do that. That's a couple things I want to, you know, everything, encryption, what's the database, blah, blah. The cool thing, they're on AWS, so you get a lot of the AWS features. If you want to install it on AWS, which I would recommend, you get a lot of AWS security. You get a lot of their SOC 2 type 2s and stuff for their infrastructure. So they should hire us, man. We can help them.
Now, Jeffrey, so you're mentioning their Discord server itself, and so they have one of the benefits is that the majority, like the whole team, is bilingual, so that does make it a lot easier. But yes, they do have French and they have English ones, and I'm just double checking here, but I thought they had a English form itself, they do have an English general discussions channel. But like if you drop your questions into like discussions English, then you'll go through and get a response there. That's where I see most people dropping that information, but then also just providing feedback and being like, hey, could we have an English form or something? They're very responsive, and it's a small business. So it's quite an upside, to be honest. And if there's something inside of the platform that is missing, that's what they're looking for. They want to, it's under extremely active development. Like I feel like they have like a few people working on this like full time.
How old is it? You know how long they've been in business?
So the business itself has been going on for like 5 years or so, but the tool is only a couple years old.
Okay.
So they, and so like during the walkthrough that the co-founder did with us, he did go through and outline like both him and his co-founder, both have like a development background. They got into risk management. They started doing consulting work and so forth. And then after a few years, then they were like, man, we can't find a decent tool out there. And a lot of these companies can't afford this kind of stuff. And so they ended up making their own tool because of their developer backgrounds. And that's what grew into CISO Assistant. And they outsourced it because they realized the need out there that a lot of these businesses run with nothing because they can't afford this.
No,
So
that's true. That's a good
yeah.
point. I did a demo. Somebody asked me if I had a GRC tool. I was like, no. I was doing
Come on,
stuff.
PBO.
I was doing stuff in O365, so I made a couple little widgets.
Yeah. But yeah, I would definitely check this out, and you can run this inside of Docker. But if you guys have any questions, definitely reach out. Let me know. There's all kinds of different stuff in here, but I did just want to go through and show how you could do that flash mode. I really like that portion and some of this other stuff that they have in here. So they seem to make it pretty easy. And I just love the coloring, like the layout. Looks pretty good. I do some of this does bother me to an extent though. Oh, there we go. I just wanted that in a straight line, you know. There we go. That's 100% right there on the zoom level.
I'm tired.
Come on, PBO. You're going to be streaming late tonight.
I'm gonna need a nap. I think I asked you this. I'm gonna use your risk register. Do you care?
No, I don't care. Run it. I dropped the link for the risk register that we just went through and built.
That's the one I took.
Yep. Yeah, run with it. Yeah, Jeffrey, and if you have any questions with that, just let me know. I know some people have had some issues with setting up Docker on like Windows 10. I think you may have to have Windows 11 at this point because of a compatibility issue with that or something. But you can also spin this up in cloud.
Go Linux.
Do you actually run Linux, PBO?
Yeah, all my AWS stuff is Amazon Linux. I did Red Hat for a decade, man. When I was a DBA and did web admin, I ran Apache and Tomcat on Linux.
I'm surprised you weren't running like CentOS.
Come on, man. From a DoD installation, I'm about to punch you through the screen, man. The only thing
for system admin stuff and developer, though.
No, you can only run Red Hat because that's the only thing that has STIG checks. They just added Ubuntu, so you got to be able to STIG it. Shout out to STIGs to harden it. So yeah, they only ran Red Hat for probably 10 years. Then they just added Ubuntu, and Amazon Linux is a fork of Red Hat, so you can STIG it with the Red Hat configuration. So.
Well, and another really cool project that you guys could go through and do if you have a little bit of Linux experience. And so this is another project that we'll end up doing and have on the roadmap is Ubuntu Pro. So you can get Ubuntu Pro. You can get 5 licenses for free. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to pay for your first 5 licenses for individual use. And the unique thing with the Ubuntu Pro is you have Live Patch, which keeps your systems up to date. But then also you have access to USG. Yeah. So USG is their like compliance check software. And so it goes against the CIS benchmarks. Ooh. And it's a really cool tool actually, where you can take the CIS and it checks all of the system information and so forth. And it actually develops a report based off the CIS. That's kind of like It's it's sort of like an internal qualis check, I suppose, but it's
No,
really a
that's
STIG check.
no, that's perfect. I mean, I think that was a perfect description of it. I'm just usually
Yeah.
more STIG guy, but a lot of people run the CIS benchmark, especially from Ubuntu. And shout out to Mr. Gunko. He asked me about that FIPS 140 at the top. That's government certified security, validated by the government. So that's a big time stamp if you can get that 140 at the top. Kevin Octa, what's the favorite thing about GRC? I go out and eat steak every Friday, and I'm fat. I get paid well. That's the best thing for me. I'm old though.
And you have regular hours, right?
Yes and no. I'm always, out with y'all, the kiddies. I call y'all the kiddies. I'm on. I don't know why I'm on YouTube so much, and trying to get that course together is killing me, man. I'm about to pass out. But now the cool thing for me, GRC, is the pay, which is up there. The other thing is, I've done the tech side for a decade. GRC, you don't get calls at night. It's nobody's gonna hack up policies. Nobody's gonna call you at 1 a.m. The only time I got called at 1 a.m. is somebody thought we were getting hacked. I'm like, dude, I don't do forensics. Why the hell are you calling me? Like you said, regular hours. Two, if you're at a high level, I just do paperwork all day.
Yeah, and like I've stated, like what drew me to GRC, like I was positioning on the blue teaming and so forth, and I came across Jerry Ozier's GRC masterclass, which I think,
Facts.
I think I have a command for that. It's either masterclass or GRC masterclass, but so once I kind of saw like the benefits of GRC and the very large demand, that's what really drew me to it. Because if you do GRC properly, which most companies do not, you could have a really positive impact. You could not only keep the business operating and keep the jobs available, but you can actually make the business thrive and have an impact on the people, like the quality of work that they do, and even the general public. So you could have a really wide span impact from the top down in a GRC role. Of course, that relies on a lot of different factors, largely buy-in, but still, that's also what kind of drew me into the entire fascination with cybersecurity culture and company culture itself, and kind of commingling that together. I feel like there could be way more impact from the GRC side. And then on top of that, it's not like a SOC where you're working 12, 14-hour days, 6 days a week, or working every holiday kind of thing.
Yeah, and the other cool part, and I always tell Chris that's why I do fair work and state work, because the government says you have to have GRC, meaning you got to have 20 policies, you got to have a plan, you got to do an incident response exercise. So if you're doing government work or reporting to the government work, IRS, state police, FBI, health and hospital for HIPAA, you got to have GRC people because they audit you on that. So that kind of forces them to have those type of resources. So, and I think that's picking up too, because state general attorneys are starting putting safe harbor on businesses if they get hacked. So I think from a GRC perspective, I think that's going to start picking up.
And so another thing that I was just reading an article the other day. I actually have it saved because I was going to post it into the Discord, because it's estimated that the GRC as an industry in the United States is expected to grow $49 billion by 2030. So,
did they say anything about AI getting us, coming for us? AI.
I did go through and post a couple of things in regards to there are a lot of companies that are coming up to replace SOC analyst level 1s. It is expected. So like there were reports in 2024, like from OCEG, ISACA, and a couple other organizations around GRC and AI. And so AI is already implemented into a lot of the GRC tools, which automates the process a lot. It's making our jobs easier, but it can also make our jobs more difficult as well. So some of the different key areas where I have seen AI being implemented is like doing the likelihood and impact ratings, going through and doing mapping from one framework to another. But the biggest thing is that human in the loop, which is actually a big buzzword now. So we're going to hear a hell of a lot more of that in the coming years. Is human in the loop, because that's still the whole thing. So yes, it's going to affect our jobs in the stance that it's going to assist as a tool, but I'm not worried about replacement.
Oh,
So
Kelvin's my new friend. You see his question?
yeah.
He's my new buddy, man.
I had so PBO. You can go ahead and hit the 853, and then I'll handle the PCI portion.
He said he's familiar with it. What do you want me to hit?
Familiar with that portion?
He said he's familiar with it. I probably just hit my my exclamation point to get my channel on my compliance, but he said he's familiar with it. That's my favorite compliance, 800-53. I've been doing it for 15 plus years. My specialty is IRS work. I'm coming out with a course probably in 2 weeks. I got to get young Chris Whitlock to go through my course and speed up now, but I know he's a busy guy. But now that's my specialty. So if you have any questions on that, once again, I probably got 30 videos on 800-53. Probably more than that. So, but once again, that's my specialty. That's kind of what I bring to the table. Go ahead on that PCI, Chris.
Oh yeah, I was going to mention this article from B-Dubs. So B-Dubs recently posted this article. So she works with PCI on a daily basis, and wrote this really, really good article. I dropped it in chat. Why PCI DSS isn't enough. So I think this really highlights a really important aspect, because that's what we see in the industry, and that's also what needs to change. Is that a lot of people will talk about how it's a checklist, but it's not supposed to be. So it shouldn't be a checklist. But and so especially if you look at PCI, like that is a very low scoped item there, just for that one area and so forth. And so a company, you'll see a lot of organizations and so forth be like, oh well, we have PCI, so
B-Dubs,
good to go. Yeah,
you called me out.
Facts.
Yeah, if you wanted to give a little rundown on this.
Well, I also want to say that PCI itself is a checklist. What I'm getting at is your security program as a whole should not be a checklist. So, some do have to satisfy the PCI DSS, and that's okay, but don't rely on that. And another thing that I've seen is people trying to get into the industry. They're like, oh, I can just go learn PCI DSS, start there. I would actually recommend starting with the NIST 853.
What?
It's going to be, I know.
I'm about to shed a tear, man.
I know. I did that for you, PBO.
Oh, shout out to us.
PCI DSS isn't all inclusive. It's kind of a specialty framework. So that's really kind of my points here with this article.
Yeah, the other thing I don't like, and shout out to Chris, because this is one of his favorite things, is a lot of people boot camp PCI and try to sell it for a lot of money to, I wouldn't say trick people to get in the industry. I'm a little.
Well, and that leads me into the question over here too. Is so where was it? Oh, so like Laura mentions, is I see a lot of senior roles, but not many junior roles in GRC. One of the biggest things I want to mention here is that GRC still follows underneath information security, and one of the biggest issues is that information security is not entry level. John Strand put it a really good way for the Simply CyberCon year one, where he talked about very controversially that information security is not entry level, because it's not. Whether you like it or not, it is not entry level. You have to upskill. If I wanted to go and get an entry level job, I would go to McDonald's and say I have no experience, and they would train me. If I want to get into cybersecurity, that's not going to fly. You have to upskill, you have to improve and so forth. And it's the same thing in GRC. You can't, like, I have talked to people who were able to get into GRC with no experience, but it's extremely, extremely rare. And I think it's even more rare nowadays. So
you can get in without professional experience, but you're going to have to compensate somewhere with your own experience and creating your own experience.
Thanks.
You can't have zero experience.
Yeah, which I think that's kind of what she was leading with the junior mention there.
Yeah.
But I wanted to call that out a little bit.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of. I'm trying to figure out what's between senior and junior. There's that mid-level role. I think there's definitely a spot for that mid-level role there. Because when I was at the state, I worked with they were junior people, but they had a lot of skills, right? So I wouldn't call it a junior role, but I trained a lot of government people. from other departments, because they were like B-Dubs said, they were bringing domain knowledge specifically with the IRS. So now we have to talk about, okay, you understand the IRS, so how do you do assessment with that knowledge? How you talk about shredding and physical security, right? So because it's a big domain. So
yeah. And then Kelvin, part of his question there was, what frameworks are you familiar with? I'm not sure I would say I'm familiar with any of them, but I have studied this.
That is incorrect. That is incorrect.
CMMC, CIS, and then the CSF 2.0
you
are the ones that I primarily studied.
You're more than familiar with those. You got to get your confidence up. I am shout out to my man. I am a Picasso. I understand what this 800-53 is. So once again, I've been doing that for like 15 years. The upshot of that is 53 really is a base cybersecurity framework. If you look in there, it says agency defined. The agency I specialize with is the IRS. But long story short, I'm old. I'm almost 60. I programmed for a decade. I got a bachelor's in computer science. I was a web admin, application admin, a DBA. So I've done everything really, but probably SOC analyst. So I've done everything. And system admin. And networking, I suck at Cisco routing. Everything else I probably physically touched before. So that's kind of my background.
Yeah.
My elevator speech.
And then also they ask, did someone have a study group for CGRC? B-Dubs is starting up the CISSP study group. I don't foresee a CGRC study group, largely because honestly, I think that is becoming less common. That used to be called the CAP.
Facts.
A lot of organizations will still call it the CAP. It does have a 2-year experience requirement in order to obtain the certification itself. But then also I've looked over that before and so forth. Yeah, and so Brexy also mentions, Brexy may even have it. Brexy is pretty well versed in it. I don't know if I would say that you would pass easily because everybody's different.
You would. I studied for the CISP and I flunked it in 2007. The next week I took the Security Plus and passed it.
The Security Plus?
Yeah. I have a Security Plus. Long story short, I was at DOD. At first they thought we needed a CISP. Then the boss looked and said, oh, no, you just need, because if you look at that 8570, my job was a 2, not a 3. He thought it was a 3. So then I just passed the Security Plus. The big mistake I did make, and shout out to B-Dub, she's going to help me. I should have went, right, because I was ready. I should have went and took the CISP again.
Yeah, and so you could see the 7 domains up here. So scoping systems, implementation of security and privacy controls, system compliance, compliance maintenance. It wouldn't surprise me if a large majority of this is in the CISSP.
It is.
But
I bet you 80% of it is. Go ahead.
Yeah, but you would have to study at a deeper level.
No, the CISP is gonna be. I bet you it's deeper than that.
The CISSP doesn't. It seems to more focus on the practical aspect of actually doing it, and from that manager decision making, right? You
might be right. I've just done so many assessments. I might be mailing that together, so I might retract that. I've just been doing assessments for 20 years. So for me, the CISP with my background,
yeah.
So I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so for somebody with no experience, I think they would still have to study just for the CISSP. You could, it's going to be hugely beneficial, and it's going to be way easier if you study the CISSP and then go to the CGRC. But I think you would still have to at least go back over those objectives.
Would you think they should ladder? If you're just getting in and you got your 2 years, would you go ahead and get the CGRC, and when you get your other 3 years, get your CAP? Your CISSP?
No, not if you're going GRC. I wouldn't. I don't plan on it.
I plan on what? Getting the CISP or the GRC?
I don't plan on going with ISC2 at all, largely because if you look at their training and so forth, they are more on the technology side, whereas ISACA is GRC. ISACA specializes in GRC itself, and unless an organization is paying for it, I don't plan on going with more memberships than I already have.
Exactly.
My only pushback, I think y'all ganging up on me though. My only pushback is CISP, which I think it's overrated. It's the gold standard. When you look at it, there's more jobs, more people look for it. So for me, I'm trying to eat steak. I ain't got much longer to live, man. So.
But the big thing is that you can't obtain. One of the biggest issues is like with ISC2, like you can go off and get and pass the exam for CISSP or CGRC, but without that verified experience, you're not even allowed to say that you passed the exam, that you actually obtained it. And so I've seen that happen where people who are new to the industry are like, oh, I just have to get the CISSP and I'm good to go. But it's actually against the rules for you to actually even list that on your resume. And then you can get that revoked. It goes against the ethics and professional standards. And that's with all of their certifications there. But that's why I largely push back on ISC2 for GRC, is because just looking at their certifications, you could see that they do have like some of the governance in here, and they do have the risk cert, but a large majority of this is for technology and information security, which does have an overlap. But if you're going for GRC, ISACA just seems like the better option. Now, that's my point of view and so forth. That's my perspective. Everybody's going to be different.
Quick question, Chris. Is that an 8570? Is ISACA an 8570?
ISACA's, yes. Yeah, all of theirs is certified, and their popular ones are.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
So this question says, I know you can pass the CGRC and get an associate designation until you get the experience requirement completed. Would that be worth it, or better to wait until the experience is done? I'm going to say, unless your employer is paying for it, wait, because, in that 2 years or even 5 years for CISSP, you might have an employer that's willing to pay for it in that time. So I would wait and get the experience first, because you can't list it on your resume until you actually hold the certification with the experience.
And so
that's my recommendation.
And I'm going to drop this link in chat, because this is a huge misconception across the market, is because you'll hear a lot of people say, oh, just go get the CISSP, just go get the CGRC, even if you don't have the experience. But you literally cannot say that you have actually passed it or otherwise. All you are allowed to say is that you're an associate.
An associate of ISC squared, not an associate of CGRC or CISSP. You can't use those acronyms at all. All you can say is associate of ISC squared.
Correct, but you still have to pay all the same money for it. And so that's one of the big issues with that aspect. And it's the same thing if you look at ISACA, for an example. CISA is a gold standard. So Certified Information Security Auditor with ISACA, and that has a 5-year experience level. It's the exact same thing. If you don't have that verifiable experience, you're not allowed to go around saying, oh, I passed and have the CISA until you have that verified experience. But at least ISACA is, straight up GRC.
Facts. I need to dig in more into ISACA. I've been more into the CISP for so long. Then once I got the Security Plus, it was kind of like, eh. So I don't know. I've been talking to some people, and they're like, as a senior person, I need to get the CISP. In case I get laid off again, I'll be out there struggling. I'll be like, we'll do risk assessment for money. I have a sign on the freeway. Risk assessments for food. I think I'm gonna do a thumbnail. Me holding a sign, risk assessments for food.
You could start a business for that.
I used to do a little thing on I used to make decent money on Upworks. I used to be out there, 3 dudes in a garage trying to sell the DOD with no paperwork.
Oh gosh.
Like, dude.
But yeah, hopefully that clarifies some of this information and so forth. If you guys have more questions, the Discord server is the best place for that. There's a lot of different people in there. I'm dropping the link for that, but we are already like 8 minutes over as is. We did go off topic quite a bit once again, but these last 2 videos for Risk Register, it was really kind of planned to do so. These were more so to like review your guys' projects and double check it all. So, and then starting next week, we'll the first one on Monday for hands-on, we'll actually be going through and just listing out like our vendors and platforms that we utilize to understand those third parties. So, you ready for your video tonight, PBO?
Yeah, I got to do a little more, but yeah, you know me, I just do it off the cuff. I'm just gonna take your risk register. I showed you do a little threat modeling off of it using the stride technique. Just build a little working model, and it'll build out your the risk you need to run through to make sure your account takeover wouldn't happen. So, like we talked about, strong. You have most of them on their strong passwords. They go in a little deeper with repudiation, which basically is encryption. But no, just gonna piggyback off of that. It just kind of jumped in my head when God, what is her name? Asked a couple questions. I thought threat model was that. It was me, you, and she's like the CISO of our org or CIO of our org.
Are you talking Marissa who presented or
no? She was in there. She had the dogs. Everybody was holding up their dogs. I think it was me, you, and R squared. How I think of it. CH. I'll figure. I'll think of it. I'm old. I'll think of it.
That's all good, PBO.
Yeah.
But I did drop the link to this video, which PBO is going live in 7 hours. So you better get your nap in.
Facts.
But yeah, I'll talk to you guys all later. Thank you guys for hopping in. See you guys in the Discord, and then we'll be back again tomorrow talking about like some of the different roles that are in the technology side of the industry, like the different departments that we may come across and kind of their job roles a little bit. But you guys have a great rest of your day. Check you guys out tomorrow. GRC Mafia.